and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and thank you for your patience if you're listening to the podcast. We did the show live, but I made technical boo-boo and somehow did not record the last show. So a couple of days late, but we're all here, and I want to thank supporters for supporting the show. It helps out a lot. It's the reason we're here. And I have a quick Christmas drawing. And the first one is, this was done the other night through random.org. It's a number generator. I took all the listeners' numbers and we put it in a random generator and came up with the first prize winner. Actually, you get a choice of two. And it's Stephen B., and I'm going to contact you by email. And that is either the 4-night stay at my house. Stephen, you may be overseas, so that may not work for you. I don't know what your situation is. Or you get the Charles Halt, the Halt Perspective signed book, either one. And the second winner was number 42, David B. Again, I'm going to email both of you. Thanks so much for your support. Now, listen, if neither one of these two gentlemen can make it to my place in Maine, then I will keep drawing until I can find someone that will. Listening to the show, you can listen every Wednesday night at podcastufo.com at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It also plays in its entirety as a podcast on the Dark Matter Digital Network, and that's every Thursday at 10 to midnight. Now, I'm going to do something a little different here because a lot of people that listen to my show also listen to Open Minds. And Jason, our guest tonight, was on Open Minds for a long time with Alejandro. They had a great chemistry as a duo. And so I'm going to have Jason join in as well right off the bat. So Alejandro and Jason, how are you guys?
Hi.
Good.
Da-da-da.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
And we have a little practice after the other night.
Yeah. So when you say they can stay at your house, you do have a bed and breakfast, right? So it's not like, a regular UFO podcast where you've got to kind of brush off the fast food leftovers from the couch to make room for someone to sleep or something.
Not the couch, the futon.
Or
Yeah, the futon.
Or the VW, bus in the yard. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do have a...
Or is that the case? If that is, that's fine. I'm not judging.
No, actually, I'll be a little more specific. I have the main house I live in, then there's a guest house, and but it's a big guest house. It could sleep up to 10 people. And
10?
And then at my house, I also have like a little observation deck with a telescope and all that. And I'm overlooking the mountains, a mountain range. You can see for miles and miles, which is unusual for Maine because Maine has a lot of trees. So also that person will be able to sit in the studio during one of the live shows if I can get the live shows to work.
Sounds like that Batman's like a state or something, like.
Well, I probably couldn't afford it in any other part of the country. So, Maine, you can find some really good deals. I guess that's how that worked out.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's a fun place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you two, let me just ask you, you two were worked together for how many years?
A little more than
35.
6 years. Six years, consciously, subconsciously, probably a couple lifetimes.
Lifetimes, yeah. Well, that's great. So I'm going to have you, Jason, sit in, of course, for the news and chime in. And Alejandro, what do we have this week?
What do we have? Well, what's interesting is what we recorded on Wednesday. Today's Friday. yesterday, and Jason will know that this can be hard. Yesterday was actually a good day for news in the mainstream press, which is, of course, what we put in our daily UFO headlines. So I just wanted to highlight that and tell people they can go check that at our website. You know, we have the latest on the front page, but if you go to articles in the daily UFO headlines, you'll see that. Just because one of them's pretty cool. It's an interview with Jeremy Corbell, who's a filmmaker who every year he submits some films to the UFO Congress Film Festival, and he'll be doing that again. But he's got a great interview on Omni. So people from Omni interviewed him about his work and also about Edgar Mitchell because he did some stuff with him. But some other local sightings and things like that in there that are kind of cool. So it was just kind of neat that yesterday was such a good news day because today was not so much. But beyond that, other things going on. Something that we posted recently that is kind of cool was from Nick Pope. So Nick Pope will be speaking in Roswell this year, and so will I, actually. You know, I got to invite – it's just kind of a funny story. Nick Pope to Roswell for the first time several years ago, and back then they did a parade. They do that now, but it's at night, and Jason's seen it. It's not impressive. It's at night, and it's supposed to be like a light parade, but some of the floats, of which there are only 5 or 6, forget to put really many lights on their float. And
yeah, the illumination is pretty scarce, so it's not all that it could be.
So they look like real UFOs then.
Yeah. But back in the day, they did a real parade during the day, and the streets are lined with people. But it was so funny to see Nick Pope, with the American flag at the time he was still living in the UK, waving that around. And he said it was his first, kind of American parade. They don't really have parades like that out in the UK. So it was just this big smile. It was such an experience. But anyway, getting back to what I'm supposed to be talking about, he wrote something that we posted. He wrote it actually for the Roswell Daily Record. And essentially what they're trying to do is ask people, especially locals or people who used to live in Roswell or were affiliated with it at all, to kind of look through their photographs, their family photos, their trinket boxes in the attic, their chests, to try to see if they can find anything that pertains to the famous alleged crash in 1947. So kind of cool. They essentially, some person was criticizing, that case is so old, why are we looking at that again? And he said, when nothing else works, let's try something new. So they're hoping someone will come up with some sort of evidence, and hopefully it'll be better than a old picture of a mummified person from like we saw, unfortunately, not too long ago. So
8-year-old mummified boy or whatever it was.
Mesa Verde.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
Exactly. Otherwise, also in Roswell news, we did post recently, Roger Marsh has been posting a lot of triangular UFO sightings lately, like a ton of them. And I don't know if it's just he has a big interest in that. Roger Marsh is the MUFON's director of communications, and so he's been posting MUFON sighting reports. One of those from Roswell, another one from Hollywood, more recent one with some drawings from Florida, or as you put it, drawings. So a lot of really interesting triangular sites. And as we've talked about before, a lot of the triangular UFO sightings seem to be kind of closer. They seem to be, not too far. One of these people said 20 feet above the ground. Another said 100 to 200. I think a lot of them are aircraft, just commercial jets, where their lights look like they're in a triangular formation. However, some of these perhaps not, where they say they've seen them closer and they distinctly see the outline of a black, triangular craft. And as in one of these drawings, the one from Florida recently, you can see that. So, yeah, a lot of triangular UFOs being seen.
Yeah, and a lot of them like float, or people say they float. There's no sound and all that. But getting back to Roswell, a lot of times I think that's actually a very good idea what they're doing, because there could be correspondence out there, and it doesn't have to be just people who live in Roswell. Someone because situations like say when President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Letters went out everywhere, so a lot of times those letters have a lot of value, and that's the same thing that could have happened with Roswell. Could have been people writing, their relatives, "Hey, you can't believe what happened here." None of that stuff is a smoking gun, but it's all very interesting and could solidify, things that happened a little more.
Mm-hmm. I get the mindset that many share of the poo-pooing the old cases because, look, we tend to have short attention spans. It's something old. We want new things. We're tired of hearing about Roswell over and over and over again with the same details that we've had for decades. But when you're dealing with something that's mysterious, and granted, not everybody feels that Roswell is mysterious. Some people like the Air Force's explanation, and as the Air Force has told us time and time again, they feel that Roswell is case closed. But look, many of us feel, myself included, that there's still a mystery as far as the Roswell case goes, and are people still holding on to material collected or information or other things related to this case that could shed new light on it? Possibly, but we don't know until we look. You're dealing with a mystery, and as long as the mystery is there and we don't have complete closure or a satisfactory, complete explanation, I think any effort to dig out more information is good.
I do too, and I also think that it is possible maybe someone has a little piece of that metal, that has eluded us for so long. Everyone that had kept those pieces of little scraps of bendable metal that reformed when you held it out in your hand. If we had just one piece of that could have come from there and explored to see what the heck it was, that may have some answers too. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Yeah. If it exists, it could be there.
That's right. It'll be fun to see what, if anything, they come up with. So I certainly wish them luck.
Yeah. We posted not too long ago a story and it was Skyships Over Cashiers, I think that's the name of the site. They had interviewed a woman who claimed that when she was a child, her friend, she worked on, I think it was Wright-Patterson, I can't remember which Air Force base, and she had seen some of this material and had described it. She seemed very credible in that interview. That's a possibility. So those people could still have that material. You never know, I guess, what might be out there. And the thing is that, especially with this one, the mystery, to your point that we don't necessarily have all the answers, is at first, they showed that material from a weather balloon. Later on, the Air Force said that was disinformation. That was not the debris, and this is according to the Air Force. So, and then the explanations of why that was done to cover up other potential, to cover up the other balloon that was being used to listen in on the Russians and if their nuclear testing.
Right, the Mogul.
That, which people question whether or not that really fits. But so their own kind of hemming and hawing around it has created this mystery. So it continues to exist. Now, the Roswell Daily Record says if you do have something, you can contact them. They'll actually have a booth at the UFO Congress this year also. So we'll have the Roswell Daily Record there talking about their event in July. And they'll have some of their newspapers from when this happened in 1947. And so they'll be handing those out and other things too.
Do you think someone will turn in that stolen UFO the flying saucer that fell off of the museum?
Well, that was discovered.
Oh, it's discovered already. That's not going to be turned in as evidence. Oh, that's too bad.
No, what happened is it looked like they ditched it on the side of the road, and so it more debris, UFO debris. So it was found destroyed on the side of the road. They probably just chucked it out of their car, unfortunately.
Yeah, or floated out. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another cover-up. Wow.
Yeah. Ooh. Good one.
So is that it? You got more stuff, Alejandro?
That's essentially it, I think. Yeah.
Well, I do want to say to the audience out there, check out. It was last Sunday. The date I think was the 18th. Alejandro was on Coast to Coast. Great show. So the listener, try to check that out. You might be able to find that online, or some of you that listen maybe subscribe to Coast. But I thought you did a great job, Alejandro. It was really good, really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great to talk to George Knapp about that stuff in particular, because several of those stories having to do with like the Clinton campaign or with John Podesta and Tom DeLonge, he was involved with. I think George Knapp is such an important person in this field, someone in mainstream media who's always tackling this topic. And, it's his organization that interviewed Hillary, or at least asked Podesta about UFOs. So that was interesting. And then also, George Knapp has been kind of a confidant of Tom DeLonge's, and all of this information about Tom DeLonge talking to these Air Force generals and things like that is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll get in.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm sure you'll get into that with Jason, because Jason has interviewed Tom DeLonge and worked for him for a period of time. So.
Righto. Well, hey, thanks so much, Alejandro, and have a great Christmas.
Yes, you too. Both of you have a great Christmas.
All right.
Yes, great Christmas to you, and happy Festivus, friend.
Happy Festivus for the rest of us.
All right. Take care.
I'll air my grievances later, and then we can do the feats of strength.
Yep, and then we'll have burritos. Jason and I were planning on having a burrito lunch at this time.
I know.
But we forewent. Is that the word?
Foregoated.
Forgot that burrito lunch in order to be talking with you, my friend.
I think that's very
giving
kind
up burritos for UFOs, man. That's dedication.
I'm still gonna go get one. I'm gonna go get a burrito right now.
You should enjoy, my friend.
All right.
Take care. Talk to you later.
See you guys.
All right. So, Jason, again, thanks again for being willing to come back, and really enjoyed
round 2.
Yeah, that's right. Really enjoyed our talk. We have some. One of the things I forgot to do, and I'm really lucky that I thought of it. It was check the forum. There's some questions up there in the forum. But first of all, for the person who this show is listened to all over the globe. So for someone that doesn't know who Jason McClellan is, please give us your background and what got you into this unusual topic.
Absolutely. Well, I have been inside the UFO world since about 2008 or so, and I was given the unique opportunity to work in the field full time, not just doing it for all day every day, but doing it and being paid to do it. So as a salaried full time position, I served as basically a journalist and researcher, fully devoted to UFOs and extraterrestrials. So was actually the first official employee and helped in the formation of UFO media company Open Minds, and kind of helped put all that together and create it into what it is today, and also helped in organizing and producing the International UFO Congress and helping grow that to the largest annual UFO conference in the world. So we get to do a lot of great work at Open Minds, and that was a fantastic experience for me, and did that for more than 6 years, as we mentioned before. So really went deep down the rabbit hole and had to get up to speed on everything UFO pretty quickly, because my knowledge up to that point was little. Like a lot of people getting into the field, I had a casual interest, but most of my early interest was spawned through sci-fi. I was a big sci-fi fan, watched a lot of Star Trek, Star Wars, and other sci-fi quite regularly. And I grew up in the middle of the desert, had a wonderful view of the night sky, went camping almost every weekend, and just, spent the night staring up at the sky, thinking about everything that could and is out there, and also seeing, strange things moving through the sky and hovering and doing weird things that I knew didn't really fit, anything I'd seen or things that, as I understood, logic or physics or things like that. So, I'm a curious person, and I enjoy exploring mysteries. So the mysteries of the universe have always fascinated me, and I enjoy looking for answers and exploring those things. So, I've had an interesting career to this point, really focused on UFOs and extraterrestrial life. And, although that's not my full-time focus anymore, it's still something that's very important to me and something I stay very active in. I launched a company called Rogue Planet, and with my friends and colleagues, Maureen Ellsbury and Ryan Sprague, we do quite a few things. I mean, we still post regular UFO headlines, UFO-related articles, and things like that, but we do a fair amount of podcasting. We started a UFO podcast. It's a bi-weekly podcast called UFO Mod Pod, and we do that sort of as a roundtable discussion. And although I think that people within the UFO community already will find it interesting, and a good show. A lot of what we do, we tend to focus on people outside that already existing UFO community, because I think there's a big need for that. You and I have talked about this before, and we certainly talked about it a couple of days ago. But when you talk to people about UFOs and extraterrestrials, it becomes more and more apparent that really everybody is interested in these topics. In one way or another, they have an interest, whether it's, just kind of a casual, oh, that sounds kind of neat, or my uncle said he saw a UFO, or something like that. Right. Everybody's got some sort of UFO story, apparently. It's fascinating how that unfolds when you bring up the topic. But people are interested in the topic. So I like to try to present UFOs specifically, but also extraterrestrial life, as a more digestible, make it more, easily accessible for people who just have that casual interest. Present them, introductory information, bits and pieces here, little bits, teasers, baby steps, and get them interested. And then through that, they'll take their own initiative to do their own research, and then start listening to shows like yours and shows like Open Minds UFO Radio, and going to UFO-related conferences, and really taking that next active step to gaining more information and doing their own exploration.
It's kind of weird, I started this show when I had basically very little knowledge and looked hardly at all into the topic, only for the reason that I had a sighting, and the sighting changed, everything basically. And I was on someone else's show. It wasn't even about UFOs or anything. It was actually a comedian out in L.A. had a podcast. I was on that and brought up the sighting. He teased me about it. And then a few weeks later, he said, "Boy, the show's gotten a lot of hits." And he says, "And it's the topic of UFOs." And that's actually what spawned me starting this show. And then I just started looking heavily into the topic. That was back in, I think it was just 2011, so not too long.
That's fantastic, and it's a great way to do it. I mean, I know that in my pursuits and the things that I do publicly, whether it's posting UFO-related articles or UFO headlines or podcasts about UFOs, a big part of that is not only to produce content and get information out to people so they can, digest it and do their own research and make up their own minds about these things, but it's also for me. It's a selfish thing. It's my way of staying current with information, my way of learning the new things that are out there, and my way of talking and having these discussions with people who are doing more research and are personally involved in these fields, that's my way of learning more and, contributing in this exploration as we go. I mean, that's my thing. Always try to keep learning because that's how that's really the best way, I think, to do it, because I certainly don't have the time to go and investigate sightings and talk to people who claim to have sightings or encounters or things like that. So just having the dialogue with people and that's the best way, I think, to keep yourself current with the latest research and to keep your mind kind of spinning and putting things together as you're piecing the puzzle together.
I guess that's kind of what I did and have been doing, is like an immersion into the topic with people that really have explored it deeply. And I find it fascinating and love doing this. Open Minds, how did you find them, or how did they find you?
So I was previously working, doing internet marketing for another company, and the owner of that company expressed to me his interest and strong interest in UFOs and extraterrestrials, and told me that he thought about starting a magazine and a company focused solely on UFOs and extraterrestrials. So, of course, that piqued my interest, and he knew my background in video production and just media production in general and writing and things like that. So we started talking, and, over the course of a year, kind of put the pieces all together, everything lined up, and eventually launched a UFO company, which is Open Minds. And so I transitioned over from one company to the other.
Wow. I wondered about that.
Right place, right time. Yeah,
that's
one of those things. So it was destiny.
Right. Now we're going to be talking about your book. Right away, when I saw your book title, I had to laugh because the title you see is "Only Weirdos See UFOs," and that's kind of like the stigma you hear a lot. But if you read the you continue on in the smaller print of the title, an introduction to the public's misconception of unidentified aerial phenomena and extraterrestrial life. That's the total cover. It's a great book. I've been reading it on Kindle, and the graphic on the front you said was Caleb's. Who was it that did the graphic?
Yeah, it's Caleb Hanks. Caleb Hanks is an amazing artist, and he's a musician, an artist, a multi-talented, very creative person. I love him like a brother, and we've done a lot of things together. And he was my first choice when I decided to do a book. I knew that I needed him to do the cover, and I basically presented him with a very easy task. Well, perhaps not so easy, but a very easy description. Going with that first part, the main title of the book, Only Weirdos See UFOs, I wanted to have art that represented that public misconception that only weirdos see UFOs. So I needed a weirdo on there, some sort of, what I told him, I said, some sort of hick or country bumpkin, the stereotype of somebody that sees a UFO. So I think he captured that wonderfully. And Caleb, I believe, has provided the open and close music for Open Minds UFO Radio. So people have probably heard his music there. He's also the brother of Micah Hanks. Micah Hanks is an author, has some UFO books, and does the Graylian Report. So covers a lot of UFO and paranormal stuff there too. So, and I don't know if he still is, but Caleb used to appear on that show every once in a while too.
Now, I think in the show we did before, I mentioned that I thought I heard Stephen Hawking say something along that line, like only weirdos see UFOs. So I'm quickly now looking on Google, and there are a lot of quotes that he had. I can't find that particular one, but basically that it's most of his quotes are of like silliness. Like, of course, I'm sure everyone out there who's ever looked into some of the things that Stephen Hawking has said about extraterrestrial life. One of his things was saying that we shouldn't be sending out signals because you never know who's going to respond. There's the fear thing there. But anyway, someone had said also that they thought your little graphic looked like, what is it, Randy Quaid?
Randy Quaid, yeah.
Pretty funny. Up on the forum, there is some questions. There's a bunch of them, actually, and I'm going to ask you this one.
Sure.
As you are a podcaster trying to promote the subject of ufology targeting a younger audience via UFO Mod Pod, do you think there is a possibility that there will be a lack of younger researchers coming through to carry on the work and investigation of the more established senior researchers? Good question.
That's a great question. I like that a lot, and I'm glad somebody asked it. We touched on this, and I will say that based on my experience over the past several years going to UFO and UFO-related conferences, there is an increase in younger attendance. And I don't know precisely what to credit that to, but I know, like we said, the interest is there. And the challenge is always how to reach those people, how to get them interested, how to get them to take that next step and come out to UFO conference, which isn't, as easy of a sell as like a Comic-Con or something like that typically would appeal to a younger person or somebody looking for a fun event. Because although I enjoy UFO conferences, I don't know if you could necessarily label them as fun all the time. Or, I mean, they're fun to me, but they're not like your typical entertaining event. They're academic and the fun for me, of course, and we talked about this too. I think we share this. It's like a family reunion because, just getting together with fellow researchers and people that you've known over the years and gotten to know through this field. It's a good time to get together and despite differing views or views that don't always align, you still get together with that common interest, and it's good to have the dialogue that happens at those events. So not always the most conducive places or appealing for people outside of the field, but despite all of that, you still see an increase in younger people. I do think the interest is there. That's why I like to present things on a different level, something that's outside the typical UFO field or the UFO community, to try to reach those people. I don't think there's going to be a shortage of researchers. I think we will pretty quickly see a lot of younger people taking the initiative to actively research, to contribute things, whether that's new podcasts or books or even new conferences. We see younger and younger people and fresh faces appearing at conferences, giving lectures, and that's always a good thing. But the interest isn't going away. There are it's a personality trait too. I think people are different, but it's a certain mentality. A person who wants to be actively involved, to take the initiative, to produce something that contributes to research and furthering the field. So you have to wait for those people to emerge, but they are emerging. We are seeing that. And I think we'll see a lot more. So I'm not worried about ufology dying off at all with as our older researchers go. There's big panic among some people in the UFO research field about the future of ufology and all the troubles it faces, and ufology's in danger. I don't agree with that. So I think ufology would be just fine.
The only way I think they're in danger, my own personal opinion, is just through the technology of hoaxing is going to be so difficult to differentiate eventually, most likely, that could really change things as far as
absolutely.
The future
That's
goes.
Certainly a hurdle that exists and has existed for quite a long time. It's certainly going to get worse, but every field of study has its hurdles and has its challenges. But if we as researchers and people in this field believe that UFOs are in fact real, which we know, we know that there are unidentified aerial objects flying around the world every day. We know that exists. We know firmly in our hearts that that's something that merits serious scientific study. then it should be fine to stand on its own. It's not something that we should worry that, oh no, something bad was said about UFOs, or oh no, the news covered a story about one person who hoaxed something, or oh no, the news covered some lunatic who raved about some ridiculous story. Now everybody's going to think that UFOs are, just this loony thing that only weirdos see UFOs. Ufology is in danger. Oh no, we've got to stop this. It's that panic mentality, or this thing that we've got to treat ufology like an injured animal or something that is so delicate and frail that we have to worry about every bad thing that's said about it. I think that mentality is more damaging to ufology than any of that stuff that people like that are worried about. Yeah, because again, if we genuinely think that the evidence is there and that it's something that's real and deserves study, then it can stand on its own. Science, other scientific fields are no different. Scientists put out studies all the time, and they're immediately met with ridicule from their peers and people who say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. No, you don't know what you're talking about. This study has no merit." They deal with that all the time. I'm not saying that it's on the same level as UFOs. That's always going to be an uphill battle. Anything dealing with UFOs or extraterrestrial life, and the ridicule factor there is certainly quite strong. Don't need to debate that at all. But other scientific fields deal with some of the same challenges that the study of UFOs do. So I think if we spent less time worrying about, people saying bad things about UFOs or some bad eggs when it comes to spreading false information or people trying to make names for themselves, we'd do a lot better and be able to focus on the more important things of solving some of the questions we have. Yeah.
Unfortunately, someone from the outside, when they get involved with something like that can burn some bridges. But, it just depends on how long they look into the topic. Here's a question up here that sort of falls along what we're talking about. This, again, comes from the forum. Although there are plenty of websites and YouTube channels connected with ufology that are full of nothing but hoax information, do you think the recent push to silence fake news might be used also to squelch those ufology sites that contain good research and valuable factual information? Does this worry you?
I'm not worried, and here's why. I mean, I think, again, with just being in the age we are currently in, just the saturation of media, so much of absolutely everything, there's no escaping fake news. It's always going to be there, and no matter what efforts happen, you can't get rid of it. I equate it to the war on drugs or, other things that are well-intentioned, or, anti-bullying campaigns. Like, they're well-intentioned and, they're a good idea, but you're not going to be able to get rid of it. It's always going to be there in some place or another. So really, as I think should be the case, everything comes back on the shoulders of the individual. We have to take responsibility in going further than just reading a headline or even reading the article and accepting it at face value. I think it's important, no matter if you're reading about UFOs or reading about politics or reading about, a new car coming out. Yes, it's great that there's somebody out there who wrote an article about it, and perhaps for some mainstream media outlet, that's great. So I think the source of the information is important, and it's important to look at that article and who the journalist is citing to. Where did that information come from? And then perhaps take it further and look at that source and see if they did in fact say what the journalist is quoting them as saying. Dig a little deeper. Yes, it's time consuming, it takes more time, but when you're dealing with things, especially things that are as big as UFOs and extraterrestrials, dig a little deeper, take some time to do the research, find out where the information's coming from, and then you can make up your opinion based on it. And again, a lot of this is in fact opinion-based. It's not concrete fact, not 100% conclusive evidence. A lot of what we're dealing with is stuff that is contributing evidence, something that can support a claim, and that's what it is, and it can support your existing belief. But if you are being objective and keeping an open mind as we explore anything mysterious, we have to be able to be flexible and change, the conclusions we've reached on certain things with our years of looking at the weirdness that UFOs can bring. I certainly know that, I think with certain aspects of things related to UFOs, I've made my mind up on how I feel about certain things, but then I come across something new, and it, I have to be flexible to alter that established belief that I've created for myself.
Right. People do have short attention spans today, only for the reason that there's so much information coming in every which direction, social media, YouTube, back to YouTube, all that, and that even goes into the title of your book. You mentioned to me that a few people just saw Only Weirdos See UFOs, and they didn't read the rest of the title, and were upset.
That was enough. That was enough, and they were done. They're all, well, I'm not reading that book, or I used to be a fan of yours, but now I have to change my mind. Yeah. No, that stuff makes me laugh, and you just have to quietly remind them or ask, yeah, thanks, but did you happen to read the rest of the title?
Yeah.
And one person even responded, no, and I don't care to, thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, thanks.
Well, Peggy, who runs my Facebook page, did an experiment where she had a picture that said one thing, and if you clicked on it, it went to a whole different other thing, and all these people were just commented. There was like 100 comments on the picture, and nobody looked at the link. It was a total different story. So, yes, short attention spans. Now, I want to talk to you about, you are one of the only few people that I've ever spoke to that actually saw the Phoenix Lights. And I know you were like 17 years old.
Yeah.
And it didn't uproot your life or anything like that. You saw this at quite a distance, right?
So, I mean, again, I think with sightings, I can't speak for other people because, again, we're individuals. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and everybody's a different person. I know for myself, I've never boasted a impeccable memory. So, when you hear about UFO sightings and people, witnesses recalling things that happened years ago, just a few years ago, let alone 1947 or something like that, with new witnesses coming forward. Different story there. But, I know thinking about something that happened all the way back in 1997, I'm certainly not going to fool myself or anybody else and try to pretend that I remember things exactly as they happened. But I do know that they seemed, the lights, 5 to 7 lights. Again, I won't pin to an exact number because I know that I don't remember exactly whether it was 5 or 7 lights that I saw. But they were pretty much directly over our property. And I can't estimate how high they were. They didn't seem to be that high, but they were certainly at some altitude. And just these bright stationary lights just hovering there. And again, I don't remember exactly how long, but I do know that I observed them for what seemed like a very long time. And I'm going to say somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes.
Yeah. Wow.
And being a 17-year-old kid, I thought it was awesome. I certainly watched it and scratched my head for a long time and wanted to know what it was. But after a while, kind of got bored of just staring at the sky. Went back inside, watched TV, saw that they were talking about it on the news, and I was like, oh, that's cool. That's what I was just looking at. Yeah. By the time I went back outside, they weren't there anymore. So,
but you're not the first person that has said on this show that they got bored with watching a UFO and went and watched TV. I think you're the second one who said that.
It's such a funny thing to say now, but it does happen. We've talked about UFO, just like sky watching before and watching for UFOs, and it's definitely something that takes a lot of patience. If you have the patience, you'll most likely see something because there's a lot of stuff out there in both the day and the night. Anywhere in the world you want to be, if you dedicate the time, you can probably see a UFO, but it's not for somebody with short attention span, that's for sure.
That's right, yeah. And out there in the desert, you have, when you get away from the light pollution, you can see some stars. I mean, you see a big, wide open sky. It's beautiful.
Yeah, where I grew up, it was away from absolutely everything. And, it was one of the reasons I loved camping so much, because you could, you could see so much of the sky that, you could actually see the Milky Way, and you could see just, millions and millions and millions of stars. So absolutely incredible sky view. So, yeah, had a really good view, and also where we were had a really good view of out toward the Barry Goldwater Range, where A-10s routinely drop flares. So I saw military flares dropped all the time. So I was quite familiar with military flares. So I can confidently say what I saw was not military flares.
Right, and that's important because there is some actual filming that you see when you look into the Phoenix Lights that were actually flares, or that were launched later on that night, whether it was to throw people off or not. But now the aftermath of that, what was that like? I mean, you must have known that there was a lot of hassling going on between Fife Symington, but I mean they were getting calls. Everyone was calling in about it for I think days afterwards, and it was probably on the news for quite a while, right?
Yeah, as we know, they did a good job at the time of trying to downplay it. And Symington's spoken about that many times now. But they did a good job, and the local media did a good job of sort of staying curious about it. But like all things, our attention spans were slightly longer back then, but there was less news flooding in all the time, so that story kind of stayed fresh for a little bit, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I remember seeing it on the front page of the paper and stuff. But people were still curious about it, but I don't recall it being something that the public was really all that interested in. They were curious, but aside from the thousands of people who did call in to Symington's office and the city council looking for answers, those things kind of go away.
Right. Someone wanted to know in the forum as well, is what was your favorite UFO case that you've reported on as a journalist?
Well, let's see. That's a good one. And, this one doesn't seem that exciting, but there was a period of time, I'm trying to remember the years now. I want to say 2011, but I could be wrong. But there was this span of time where hundreds of UFOs were seen on the Chino-Indian border. And these lights were reported and investigated by the Indo-Tibetan police force, the military, chief astronomers there. And this was an ongoing thing. You're talking about police officers, military personnel seeing these things, and astronomy experts commenting on them. And people thought, that maybe they're Chinese lanterns, but these things would stay in the air. I don't remember the specifics. It's certainly in my book, but they would stay in the air for a half hour or so, traversing the sky. And these people went on alert. They thought that they were under attack. They had confirmation or multiple statements from people working at these observatories saying that we've dismissed any possible celestial bodies or anything like that. So these experts, the military, the police, they were completely baffled after launching investigation into this, trying to figure out what they were. And I just think that case was really fascinating because there was no conclusion, and watching the media react to that case as well, because there was one media report from one media outlet that said that they'd concluded that it was Chinese lanterns or something. But then there was another report, and I couldn't find any confirmation of that, by the way, but then there was another report that came out later with a quote from one of the scientists from an observatory saying, we're still completely perplexed by this. We have no idea what they are. So you had conflicting media reports and all of these official bodies looking into these hundreds of UFOs along India's Himalayan border with China during a 2.5-month period. and they have no idea what these things were.
Isn't that amazing? Wow, that is something I was never familiar with that. Let's say someone wanted to know what is the style of your book. Is it testimonies from people, or is it case studies, or something else entirely?
The book is laid out in an interesting way. Again, the purpose of this book is to provide, as the subtitle describes, an introduction to the public's misperception of unidentified aerial phenomena and extraterrestrial life. So it gives little bits and pieces here and there, starting off with sort of the history of the modern UFO era and looking at, pointing out to people in the general public who might not be familiar with the fact that the government has, governments around the world has and do investigate UFOs. Touching briefly on some of the big cases from the beginning of the modern UFO era, talking about Kenneth Arnold and Roswell and things like that. So some other big cases in here too, touching on Rendlesham and things like that, looking at military UFO encounters. So really the book is segmented out, talking, highlighting some more of a okay, so I'll say it like this. What really spawned it was, my background in being a UFO journalist, writing stories for so many years about UFO sightings and people who had UFO sightings. And what news typically is when, celebrities or, other public officials or public people in the public spotlight have some sort of UFO sighting or make a comment about extraterrestrial life. So there's a lot of stories in here just kind of highlighting people, whether they're celebrities, musicians, military personnel, pilots, just a wide variety of people, pointing out that people from all walks of life either have thoughts about UFOs and extraterrestrial life or have seen UFOs and or extraterrestrial life. It also has a good section at the end talking about focusing on extraterrestrial life and about mainstream science and the current efforts to search for extraterrestrial life, and a lot about astrobiology and things like that, and thoughts from mainstream scientists on intelligent extraterrestrial life.
And what about the person that says to you, UFOs and extraterrestrial is, or aliens as they put it, is all just part of pop culture, and that's the only reason people have interest and people are seeing them?
Well, I certainly think and know that UFOs are a huge part of pop culture, but we know that, unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported since the beginning of documented history. The military certainly takes UFOs seriously. We know that objects are in the sky every day all around the world, objects that, UFOs does not mean alien spacecraft. It certainly could be. That's a possibility. We can't discount that. But there are objects, and this should really concern people and make scientists take great interest in the fact that we do know that we have objects flying around in our airspace and we don't know what they are. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. So now we know that. And that's funny that that's a hurdle we still have to get over, even talking about whether or not UFOs exist. We know UFOs exist, but that's still a question that, the mainstream public has. That's the perception that we don't know if UFOs exist or not. We do know that UFOs exist. They're seen by people from all walks of life all around the world every day. So the real question is what are they? So that's the fun and, really the big reason that I stay interested in this field is just the unknown of it all and trying to find those answers. But with extraterrestrial life, sure, you have lots of people who do claim that they've personally experienced or encountered extraterrestrials, intelligent extraterrestrial life, and that's great. Some of them are really good stories, really fascinating, and some quite compelling. But again, it comes down to belief, because we don't have real documented or conclusive proof that's going to convince anybody or change anybody's mind conclusively. So it comes down to a matter of what you want to believe. If you want to believe certain evidence or certain testimony, so there's a lot of that. But as far as mainstream science goes, and where we are with extraterrestrial life, just, talking on a microbial level, which is what, a lot of the focus is on, most people involved in some way or form with that study will tell you that discovery is right around the corner. And Martin, you and I have talked about this, and, I've certainly gone on record saying that I think even as soon as 5 years, we'll get some sort of confirmation from mainstream science that some sort of extraterrestrial life has been found. But there are so many missions underway right now, either on the drawing boards or already being realized, that are actively searching for extraterrestrial life. And there are mainstream scientists, being funded by mainstream funding with the specific purpose of searching for intelligent extraterrestrial life. So that stuff is happening in mainstream science. But I think a lot of people in the mainstream, and even within the UFO community, don't realize that. So. Right.
Well, now one of the questions that's come to mind, I've asked a few different people that I've had on the show this. Let's just say that there are, I'm just going to throw a rough number out there. There's billions of intelligent extraterrestrial life out there in the universe, and a lot of them have figured out the physics to get here. Why would they get here? Why would they come visit us? Why are we special? Why would we be so special if there are billions of planets out there with intelligent extraterrestrial life?
Well, going back to something that you and I had talked about, in talking about intelligent extraterrestrial life, we like to personify extraterrestrial life. We like to think of, in human terms, and us. And that's how astrobiologists view extraterrestrial life. They're looking for life as we know it, because that's kind of what we have to go on. We don't know anything else, and it's hard for us to fathom, just kind of throw things out and make guesses at what other life might be like. So we're basing things off of life here on Earth. We're talking about intelligent extraterrestrials. We're thinking of them as we would humans, with human personalities and, different human minds. So, that's where Stephen Hawking likes to throw in his, and that's the exact analogy he uses, looking back at human history and, how war hungry we are and how we like to take people and push them off their land and use their resources. So, yeah, looking at it, and perhaps that's vanity. I don't know if we want to think that aliens are like us, or if aliens are here, they're here because of us, because we're special. I don't necessarily. I think that's certainly a possibility, but it's just a guess. We're guessing that if they're here, they're here because we're special or there's something interesting about us, and that may not be the case. It could be that as Hawking and others feel that. They're interested in our resources. So whatever their sensors or their technology concluded that, the resources we have here on our planet would be of value to them. But, it could be like us going on a road trip, driving down the freeway. Just because we drive by a certain gas station or through a certain town doesn't mean that town is special, or, we thought that town was particularly interesting, so we decided to drive through it. It just happened to be there when we were going by.
Wow. Very good analogy to that. I have wondered, that is the question. Another question, I should say, and why they would think we're so special is baffling. But I never thought of the resources that could be. Again, Well, and
also think about this. I mean, if space travel is so easy. For some beings out there, some civilizations, think about it like TV too. If we're watching TV and flipping through the channels and stop on a channel, it's because we saw something that looked interesting. We might not necessarily have intended to watch that show, and we might not stay watching that show, but hey, we saw it. We'll check it out for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Tom DeLonge, we said we were going to talk about him. Now, you worked with him. I know you went out first. You and Maureen went out and actually interviewed him. a number of years ago, and then you got to know him and stayed in touch with him and then worked for him for a while. He's been in the news a lot, or the UFO news at least, a lot lately. And I know you and I spoke about this the other night on the show, and one of the things I mentioned to you, and I thought you had a really good point, was I thought that he'd be like the perfect person to send along misinformation to. And you said basically that he was aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's certainly the thought that I think crossed most people's mind when we all heard about it. But, Tom, from the very start, I think, was hit with that question. And I think George Knapp might have been the one to pose it to him the first time in a public interview. But, yeah, Tom said that he is convinced that he's not being fed information or used for disinformation, because, and this is his explanation, and why he personally feels this way, is that these advisors of his, these military and government and other important individuals, are not giving him information. They are simply basically responding or confirming things that he's presenting to them, things that he's come up with based on his decades of research. Tom is, surprises people, but in my opinion, Tom is one of the most well-read people when it comes to UFOs. He's been, actively researching UFOs, for decades, and, is quite well read and goes pretty deep on the subject. So he's not a newcomer to UFOs at all. And being who he is, as a rock star and public figure, he's certainly capitalized on that over the years and arranged personal meetings with a lot of the leading researchers in the field today. So, his activity in the UFO research world is nothing new. And he's aware, certainly, of, disinformation campaigns and all the negative bad guy, reputation the military has surrounding this topic. He is 100% convinced that, he's been given good information or confirmed. The information that's being confirmed is good. He trusts the people that he's working with. And people think that Tom's deceptive or that, he's doing what he's doing for money. I disagree with all of that 100%. I will just say that this is just my personal opinion based on my personal relationship and experience with Tom. I genuinely believe that what he is doing is something that he firmly believes is good for the field of UFOs. He genuinely has a passion for this, and it's what he wants to do with his life. I mean, he left a lucrative music career to focus on this type of stuff and other things that he wants to do. He's doing this out of love. And if he wanted money, he could certainly quickly turn around, rejoin Blink-182 and go on tour. And that's certainly not off the table at this point. But I will say what he's doing and the work at To the Stars, I think is really good, really exciting. He's doing a lot of fun stuff that he's always wanted to do that ranges from all sorts of things, from comic books and novels and movies and TV shows and music. So he's doing the things he loves, and he has the means to do it. So I think he's doing something good. I think what he's doing with his property, Secret Machines, is definitely something to watch, and I just encourage people. I mean, again, I don't know if the information that's going to come from this project is any good or not. I don't think if it's any. I don't know if it's anything new. I don't know if it will be earth-shattering. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. But there's been so much speculation around this whole property and really crucifying Tom before, knowing much about this project aside from what Tom says. And he's been very open about the project and, some of the people he's worked with. I mean, working with Podesta, he made public a long time ago, 2 years ago. But, when the nonfiction books come out, which the first in the nonfiction trilogy will come out in March, written by Peter Levenda, co-written with Peter Levenda, with a foreword by Jacques Vallée, then we'll see what this information is when the documentary comes out, and that's what I'm most excited to see. This documentary,
really soon, right?
Yeah, it should be. Then we'll see what this information is and what he's been pushing out and talking about for the last year. But we're in this we talked about short attention span, but also short patience. We're in this era of like wanting everything right now. We don't have patience to wait. Right. We want all the spoilers. We want to read the articles and hear about things that are going to show us the latest stolen images of the new iPhone or the newest trailer of Star Wars, things like that. We just can't wait till it actually comes out to see what it really is. We want to know all the little details now.
Right. Have you communicated with him since the WikiLeaks emails?
No. WikiLeaks caused all sorts of problems, and communication's kind of been cut off since then. But no, I mean, from what I heard, they definitely had to do some damage control because of that. It compromised a lot of, the sources that they had, worked so hard to develop and promised anonymity to these people. Some of that was damaged. Because of WikiLeaks, so they had to do some serious damage control with that, but they seem to be back on track and things are going well, and we'll get to see the first of these nonfiction books coming out. Peter Levenda is a great guy, very very great researcher. And they've been working on this and the research they've done for years now together. And Peter's a fan of Jacques Vallée, like so many of us are, and I know Tom is. So the fact that he contributed the foreword to that book, I think, says a lot about it, and I'm just excited to read it.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you and I agree on this, that within a short period of time, I think it will be public knowledge that there will be a discovery of extraterrestrial life. Whether it's intelligent or not, I have no idea. But the last question I'm going to ask you on the forum here is, do you think at least some kind of partial disclosure, boy, I'm having a hard time here, partial disclosure is coming?
People in this field like to latch on to certain buzzwords, and I don't know, for one reason or another, they always rub me the wrong way, because I think they overcomplicate things. Disclosure is one, consciousness is another. When really what people are typically talking about when they use those words is something that's very, very basic. And with disclosure, I've said this, since I started in the UFO field, and I have the same mindset now. I don't ever think there will be some grand disclosure like some people think there will be, like a president coming forward and saying, surprise, we lied all these years. We've known everything. Here's what we know. Here you go, guys. We're finally stopping our lies. That'll never happen. There's never going to be an admittance of prior knowledge or intentional deception. That won't happen. I think when something's discovered, that will be announced, whether through it's a NASA press conference or something like that. And then it is what it is. If there's something to do from then on out, if there's, additional missions launched or further investigation to do, then it'll happen. But I don't think it's going to be some big hullabaloo or something earth-shattering. I mean, it is pretty earth-shattering, but I don't think it's going to be this grand government thing where they come forward and say, all right, we've discovered it, and P.S.
Yeah.
Let's take you live to Area 51 now and show you what we've been working on.
You and I agree on a lot of things, I have to tell you. Okay, so your show is called UFO Mod Pod, and that's bi-weekly. And and it's with you, Maureen, and Ryan.
Correct.
And someone can find that. How do they find that? Is that actually a URL as well?
Easiest way to do that is iTunes, but it's also on various other podcast locations. But our website is rogueplanet.tv, and you can find UFO Mod Pod there, as well as some of our other shows and other content that we're working on.
Great. Well, Jason, it's been a real pleasure, and you're a real trooper to come back and after we already did the 2-hour show. I really do appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me back and doing this again with me. We did have so much fun in that 2 hours, and I'm sad that it's gone forever. But
yeah, that's right.
We created new magic today, and that's great. Yes,
that's right. And a lot of you out there are celebrating Christmas in just a couple of days, so I want to say Merry Christmas to you. And I know I was in Russia this year, and Russia celebrates on January 6th. Not everyone celebrates it on December 25th. And, of course, not everyone celebrates Christmas. But to those who do, Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas to you as well, Jason.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
All right. So, everyone, we'll be back next week with Ray Stanford. And Ray has been on this show a number of times. He is going to be talking about different topics. He's real excited. He's got a lot to say, and he'll be on next week. And I want to thank Jason, of course, our guest, and Alejandro Rojas, and the other people that help out with the show, Peggy for managing the Facebook page. Remember to like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news. Again, we'll be back next week, and remember to keep your eyes to the sky.